Hello again, Evan.
Hey, Cayman, how's it going?
Not bad. Just for the listeners at home to know, we've been talking for about 30 minutes now before we even started recording. And if we do decide to put this up, which we haven't yet, this will be episode 10.
Yep. And also, if you've been listening and I guess want maybe some more regular spiritual check-ins, check out our Facebook page at Oneness Radio. As well as you can find our content on YouTube as well, under Oneness Radio. Mm-hmm. And we also have a Twitter account, which is a bit unfamiliar for both of us, but again, you can find that at Oneness Radio.
And Instagram as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, all the forms of social media. And from my end, I'll try to do my best, but it might be irregular. But everything will be from the heart. So
yeah.
We were just talking about how because of the current situation we're in the world, a lot of people are forced to be in their homes with their families or by themselves. And that's putting stress on a large number of the population. So, domestic violence and divorces and things like that are on the rise in countries that have kind of been in the lockdown for a while now, and people wanting to separate from each other. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have been coming together more, actually, too. So there's both sides of it. And a lot of people have been being more at peace and more relaxed. So there's two things happening as an outcome of what's going on. And to speak to the first occurrences, I would propose that anyone who is at home feeling stressed, or with their families at home feeling very stressed about the whole thing and wanting to get out, I would say that you're at home now in an environment where you can't express yourself in a way that you would when you leave the house and with other people that aren't your family or that aren't yourself. And I would ask those people to just consider for a moment that when you leave the house, you're taking all the things you're feeling now and you're putting that out into the world. And that's why you are feeling it now, that you can't put it out into the world through your actions and interactions and words. You're left with it to deal with on your own, or you're left with it to deal with it in your nucleus of your family. And so I would consider taking a good look at myself and saying, wow, I'm putting that out into the world on a regular basis every day. That's what it's like to be around me. So if I'm feeling like this when I'm by myself, that means that when I'm around other people, that's what it's like to be around me. Or if it's causing chaos in the home because everyone's at home, then that's what it's like to be around me if I don't get that outlet. So I'm expressing and putting that out into the world. And that's why I maybe haven't noticed it. But now that I'm forced to just be with it, be with myself, and be in a very small group, I'm forced to now deal with those things face to face, so to speak. And so I would just consider that and try to find a way to help yourself deal with whatever it is you're going through that's stressing you out or causing anxiety or whatever is going on. Basically, a way to deal with the experience of yourself in a way that's not harmful to others. So that you can still get rid of those things without being harmful or careless or disruptive to others. And there are many, many, many avenues and ways in which to do this. And now of all times could be one of the best times to do so, so that when all this passes too and you go back out into the world, you're much more mindful of what it is you're putting out into the world. So that maybe you began this as the person who's stressing everyone out the most when you go out into the world, or causing the most disruption through whatever unself-awareness or denial or justification you're giving those actions. But now that you're forced to be with them on your own or in small groups, you're face to face with them and you realize it. And instead of doubling down on it, now might be a time to find healthy, harmless, constructive ways to deal with those energies and those thought patterns in yourself. And then to go back out into the world, a new person, reborn, so to speak. And it's all the information is there at your fingertips. You could even put a Google search in is, I am face to face with my own negative, stressful thought patterns and need to find constructive and less harmful ways to deal with those energies. You can type that into Google. And I guarantee you there will be many, many, many avenues from which you can choose from in order to have help in this issue. So the help is there, but the initial step is that you have to really want it. And, as not you, relatively speaking, it can't be done for you. And, we can't say, you got to do this. It's got to come from within you to want to, one, see those things in yourself, and then two, want to change them and grow past them. And, so that's what I thought I'd just say as a service to those listening on both ends of that spectrum. And for those of you who are at home, having the best time of your life, meditating every day and doing home workouts and enjoying this time, this relaxing time, and loving being at home with your families, then, enjoy it.
Yeah, that's basically where I'm at now. Like, I'm absolutely loving this basically time off, getting paid to spend more time with the family. I've just started my own sourdough starter. Look at that. And baking bread. It's fantastic. Sort of going back to basics, which I've always wanted to do, but now, of course, have the time to do. And of course,
sorry, you started your own sourdough like company or just start baking?
No, sourdough starter. So like basically like a yeast starter that I can start making my own sourdough bread.
I got you.
Right. And so I've been doing that, and also, incorporating, my daughter's learning into it as well, which is great. So getting her involved. And so for sort of people who are, really enjoying this time and making the most of it, whether you're learning something new or, like Cayman said, you're meditating and, bringing good vibes, you may find at some point that, thinking like, what happens at the end of all this when, the coronavirus is sort of under control, they develop a vaccine, and you see in the media and everything where, governments are just trying to hold things down so it goes back to normal, but sort of feel that, what was happening before really wasn't great. The normal wasn't so great for the vast majority of the population. And they're sort of concerned about that, which, I have those thoughts and feelings quite regularly. And you feel sort of hamstrung because, you're stuck in this self-isolating environment where you can't really convene with other people and discuss maybe how to move ahead. Just, I guess, how I've sort of dealt with that is just to continue to do the next right thing, I guess, which is basically not to look too far ahead and conceptualize how this will all turn out, but to continue to look within and work on sort of those behaviors that are coming up that are still not serving myself or the people around me. So you may not be struggling in this time, like with severe stress or anxiety, and you may be really enjoying it, but continue to be mindful of what's coming up. And if you are being mindful and coming to a sort of place of stillness regularly throughout your day and doing no harm as you're going and interacting with others, and you still feel like you need to sort of do something, right? There's always that sort of habitual pattern to always do. That's fine. That's sort of normal for the human being. But remember, it's always important to do from a place of stillness, right? And not in a place of sort of fear or anxiety or boredom. There are people out there who feel the same way you do and are looking to sort of build a new world out of this. We previously spoke about this as, a sort of soft reset for humanity, because despite it being quite tragic and, tens of thousands of people have already died, humanity has taken a step back, and it hasn't been something as devastating as like a nuclear war or complete economic collapse where, chaos ensues everywhere. So we do have an opportunity still to sort of look at what we've been doing as a species and change the trajectory of our fate, I guess. And it comes down to the individual, because you can see that our modern society, basically our civilization in general, is just an external reflection of the internal. So most of the way that our world is run and expressed is to either mitigate death or to acquire your highest desires, right? That's just a reflection of the collective human unconscious. So it's really important that in this time that you yourself are doing the work that's necessary. That, like K-Man said, when you leave your home, you're bringing that which is within you out into the world. And people pick up on that. You pick up on it all the time, on what vibe people are bringing. Yeah.
You said something very nice there, which is the next right thing to do. Mm. So during these times, and in all times, your mind has a tendency to run ahead of you. And being mindful is kind of reining those horses in, so that your mind doesn't gallop off ahead of you and kind of drag you in the dust. And what's being dragged in the dust is your heart. We spoke about this in the last podcast, is letting the heart lead the mind. So letting the heart as it is lead the mind as it is. But when the mind leads, it runs and gallops ahead, and your heart can't find peace kind of being pulled along behind it. But if your heart is put out in front with nothing ahead of it and left to be on its own for a while, it will naturally rest in a sense of peace and calmness, and let that be the way you kind of move from one point to the next. Nisargadatta Maharaj is quoted as saying that the Jnani walks through life like this: one step in knowing, one step in not knowing, one step in knowing, one step in not knowing. Always balance between the two, so that knowing never runs off too far without understanding that I don't know. And I don't know doesn't get so stagnant that you start to gather dust and become what they call a stone Buddha. So to kind of balance this and learn how to ride the bicycle of existence is one of the, say, side effects of pursuing the topic which we are discussing now. And you'll feel moments during your journey when you feel like you've the same feeling you felt when you learned to ride a bike for the first time. And for all of those using things to help you, such as psychedelic drugs or fasting or certain diets and different things to kind of bring about these heightened levels of awareness, I would say to you, you still get to ride the bike, but you're using training wheels. Trust life enough to take the training wheels off. I spoke with someone earlier this week in which they were talking about this is all a conspiracy so they can put up 5G towers and I think create some kind of new neural net so that eventually human beings can be, uploaded. And this is the next step in whatever. There's a plan for us and stuff. And I have no idea. But my response to this line of questioning was this. If that is something that we're moving towards, then what they're trying to kind of do is make it so that we can all be uploaded into a VR world and then live out our fantasies in a simulated reality. Right? And, all right, okay. Let's make space for this line of thinking. Let's make space for it for a moment. And consider this. Why do we run simulations? I myself come from an engineering background of education at one point in my life. And we'd run simulations. So we'd have something called a wind tunnel, where we'll take a model of a plane or a model of a wing or a model of an engine and simulate air flowing through it to see how it performs. Or we would make models of buildings and then put it on a rocker type thing, and it would simulate an earthquake, right? So before things get to the final part of design, a model is built of them, and then a simulation is run. And my question, when I was in a certain part of this so-called journey, was why do we run simulations? And I'm going to use you as the sounding board for this part of the conversation, Ev, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no worries.
And hoping that you don't give the big reveal away too quick, but after listening to simulation runs, I would pose the question to you, why do we run simulations?
Yeah, simulations, I guess, as an engineer, is to minimize the risk posed to individuals when the actual work is completed in the physical world.
So then, yes, that's true. So then I pose the question again is then, why would we want to do that? Why don't we just build something and let it go? Like just, I built it and then, okay, let's go. Why do we need to run simulations?
Yeah, I guess for the same reason, is to ensure that no one is harmed in the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, if we just built it and then ran with it, so to speak, what would we be experiencing? So suppose you built a plane, and then with no testing, no simulation at all, you just got on it and decided to fly. What would you be experiencing in the cockpit?
As the pilot,
Yes.
I guess anxiety and uncertainty.
Yes. And anxiety and uncertainty are lieutenants of what?
Fear.
Yes. So we run simulations because we're afraid. And if we don't do something without simulating it, we experience fear. And so the mind, which will never admit to the fact that it doesn't know what's going to happen from one moment to the next. You have no idea of what's going to happen next. And that's always the truth. So the mind is constantly looking over your memory or past gathered data and then projecting and extrapolating what it thinks the next moment will or should or could be. And you are left in the middle, constantly looking over your memory, processing it, and then putting it on to the existing moment, trying to run a simulation of how life should be and could be. But your simulation never matches up to what is. And yet, you can't stop doing this because you're too afraid to. And so I would say, before we start talking about uploading into 5G towers and simulations and stuff like that, notice that you're running a simulation and you're living in a simulation of your own making right now. The mind is like a spider. I say this because a spider, when it eats, it doesn't kind of trap things in its web and walk up and go, oh, that's tasty, I'm going to just chomp down on that. No. A spider, when it finds a fly trapped in its web, wraps the spider up in more webbing, like a little cocoon, and leaves it there for a while. Before it leaves, it injects it with kind of a stomach acid from its own stomach that breaks the thing down inside the cocoon and turns it into kind of like a gooey, liquidy type thing. And then that makes it digestible to the spider. And then the spider can suck that out now. So the spider vomits its stomach stuff up onto something, which then melts that something down into something that the spider then can digest and is palatable and edible to the spider. And in the same way, your mind acts like a spider upon reality and what is. So you're constantly going over your memories, processing and then extrapolating, or you're constantly looking into your own experience, or you could say the stomach of what you've already experienced, and then vomiting that up onto the present moment so that it can be processed in a way that is consistent with what you've experienced up until now. So that there's a linearity to the way you're experiencing experience. And if something is undigestible to you, you will go unaware of it, or you will ignore it. It won't be within your linear reality because you haven't vomited up experience from your stomach onto it so that it can be digestible to you. And so it will go unnoticed or unprocessed or undigested. In that sense, the mind is like a spider, constantly running simulations, extrapolating. And we have become very good at extrapolating using the laws of physics and science.
Yeah.
We can tell you what the movements of the planets will be for the next billion years. We can actually predict the end of our own solar system. We can kind of tell you around when it's going to happen, how many billion of years from now. Like, we can do that now. So if we're given the physical properties of a thing, we're able to run a simulation that we can predict how it's going to turn out based on the laws of physics. But in all of our calculations, we can't get it perfect. There's always a variable. We just can't get it, so that we can give you models and theories and extrapolations that almost will tell you the how the future will turn out from the perspective of the laws of physics. But we can't get it perfect yet. And so science is almost looking for this variable. And if we find out what this variable is, and we can predict that, then we could just predict the future. We could tell you how everything's going to go. And in all the universe, we can predict a whole bunch of stuff and how it's going to turn out and how it's going to kind of act, so to speak. But we've encountered something in our data that is unpredictable. The one thing in the universe that is just sometimes completely unpredictable. And what's that, my friend? The one thing that seems to be acting irrationally and unpredictably.
Is that love?
Haha, yes. Don't skip ahead to the end, my friend. But life. We don't know what life's going to do. We can run simulations. We can kind of go and look at patterns. But we don't know when something's just going to go off, right? I don't know when a tiger's just going to go, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to attack that, right? Or we don't know when a lion's just going to go, I'm going to choose to raise a deer as my child. That happens. We can't predict life. So in all of our equations that we're trying to extrapolate what happens next, the one thing we can't predict, we can't account for as a variable to 100% is life, or raw energy itself. So that's part of the conundrum, is that we are life. And as far as we know, we're the most advanced form of it, or the highest expression of it, the most intelligent and ordered expression of it that we know of. And so life itself that we are is trying to extrapolate and run a simulation, but the one thing we can't predict for in this thing, the variable we can't figure out, is life itself. So the thing that's trying to extrapolate this equation is the very thing that's stopping this thing from extrapolating the equation. Which leads to a repetitive, endless loop.
Yeah, which is, basically what we were talking about earlier, how we, as human beings, project our ideas of the universe and life onto the universe and life. So, often people might say that the brain is a great pattern recognition machine. It recognizes patterns in all sorts of things in nature. But I would say that it's not a pattern recognition machine. It's a pattern creation machine. The brain breaks down the universe into chunks that make it easier for the mind to understand. However, the universe is one whole thing. It doesn't exist in fragments and parts. And basically, the old sort of Newtonian physics is all about the mechanism of the universe. But the universe isn't running a pattern, which is ultimately why we can't predict what the universe will do. It's just spontaneously arising at all times. And like K-Man said, as you can get extremely accurate with the projected patterns that we put on to life. But as Jeff Goldblum says in Jurassic Park, life finds a way. And the pattern is disrupted. And when you look at your own life in this case, find where the patterns are being played out, particularly those negative patterns or patterns that you may not think are negative but are causing other people harm. And recognize them and sit with them. And realize that that's just the structure of the human being and the mind that's playing itself out in this form. And once you sort of take a step back and see that, then you realize there's no pattern. And you're in that spontaneous play of the entire universe. You yourself are just happening in that entirety. And the idea of cause and effect are thrown out the window in that place. Because you can see that even going back all the way to the Big Bang, that what's taking place now is still the remnants of that initial explosion into life or into the manifest. It's still all just playing itself out based on, 4 laws of physics, which become the nuclear laws, then the chemical laws, then the biological laws, and then the social constructs that are created because of that. And so all these things arise out of that initial explosion, but it hasn't stopped. And it's still happening. Which is why it's important not to always look back in the past and say, this happened because of that, or this happened because of that, and my life is this way because of that. The entire universe is acting out on your form. Your form is fully dependent on everything happening in the entire universe. That's how we're all interconnected. So it's always important to come back to that space of silence and realize that it's all just happening as it is. Even your idea that you're controlling it is happening as it is. That you're running your own destiny, or you're at the whims of fate. That's just happening as it is. And stay in that place of non-pattern recognition and oneness with all.
Surrender. And this may be a lot to just say, okay, just surrender. But there are many, many, many ways and many avenues available out there to help you with the letting go part of it. Almost as if you have to kind of breathe your way out of it. And there's many practices that literally help you breathe your way out of just, okay, right? More complex than that, but in the end, that's what they're kind of helping you do. They're easing you into this. Because for most people, it must be eased into. So be tender with yourself. Be kind. Be gentle. But never give up. And despite what is happening, all that arises in this universe, becoming alive, dying, exploding, collapsing, expanding, moving from place to place, spinning in spot, staying still, rising and falling. The entirety of existence is happening on top of a background of a still, silent, empty space that allows for all of it to happen unchallenged. So, this is always the truth, even within yourself. And this is the true nature of the mind, as they say in Zen. Still, silent, empty, and yet all that's happening arises in it. It encompasses it all, without judgment, and just lets it arise and fall as it will, as if it was an unconditional love for everything that ever will or was. And no matter what I say and what I do, that is always the truth in the background. So in the end, try as I might, peace will always have the last word. So why not just stay on the winning side? And no matter what we say about this, that won't change. No matter what you think about what we say, it also won't change. No matter what happens, that also won't change. So, if we could be still for a moment and just focus on your breath, inhaling and exhaling, inhaling and exhaling. Your heartbeat pumping, clenching and unclenching. We all live by the grace of our next breath, of our next heartbeat. Without these, I am nothing. Without my next heartbeat, without my next breath, I depend on these two things just to move in to the next moment, for the next moment to actually be. Clenching, unclenching, inhalation, exhalation. This principle is what all life depends upon. And this is also the true nature of the Buddha mind. They say in Zen not to hold on and become attached to anything, and then also not to avoid anything. Let's look at the flip side of these two statements. To not attach oneself to something is to let it go. And to not avoid something is to accept or embrace it. And now, that it's flipped. Look how this principle is what also life itself depends upon. The heart clenching or embracing this next moment as it is, no matter where it is and what's happening. And then unclenching, letting it go. The inhalation, taking it all in, no matter what it is. And the exhalation, letting it all go. Apply this practice with all in your experience, and most importantly, with anything that arises in your mind. Meditate upon this. Whatever arises, embrace it. Allow it. Make space for it. Okay. And then let it go. Let it be. Embrace and let go. Embrace and let go. Love and peace. Love, peace, always happening, all the time, no matter where you look. All of existence is embraced by the background of the still, empty, unchanging, and therefore timeless silent space. And then left to continue on and be what it is. Let go within this still, silent, timeless, empty space. No matter what's happening, this is. Notice this about yourself. Even this voice speaking, my entire life was embraced by this space and will one day be let go by this space. And no matter what I do, that always is. Unchangingly. No matter where you look, that's all that's ever, always happening.
If you've been listening to our most recent podcast, you'll see that by the end of the podcast, we've come to that place of stillness and silence, which, if you follow along, is the ultimate goal of spirituality and religion. If you're a Christian, this is the good news that Jesus talks about. This is what he's pointing us all towards. If you're in that space that is allowing everything to arise and then allowing everything to go, look at the qualities of that space. As K-Man said, no matter where you look, it is. It's omnipresent. No matter what arises within it, it knows. It's omniscient. And it gives rise to all things and destroys all things. It's omnipotent. And when you put your attention to it, it has no qualities the mind can speak of. It's ineffable. And at the same time, it embraces all. It's all loving, unconditionally loving. And the word that the Christians ascribe to it is God. Or the Muslims ascribe Allah. Or the Taoists, the Tao. Or the Buddhists, the void, or Brahman, or the unmanifest. There are so many names. And look and see, where are you in relation to that? You see the person playing out their life within that. You're not that person. Your true place is in union with that. And that doesn't mean there's two of you. It is a oneness. You yourself are that.
And on a practical note, I was sitting one day in silence, just watching clouds pass over mountains, at peace. And then construction nearby began, as it does in the morning. And I was perturbed because it was no longer silent. And at first, I said, only peace. I'm just going to ignore the noise and just meditate on through and focus on the silence. Then the principle came back to me, as if to gently remind me, the construction and the noise from it also is. But my annoyance at that noise also is. And so, instead of trying to suppress my annoyance or ignore the noise, I made space for the noise, and I made space for my annoyed thoughts that arose because of the noise, thereby letting the space hug myself and experience with its two arms, so to speak. And now, having embraced them both, myself and experience, I was able to let them go as one, unperturbed. From my heart, I say, apply this. And to whoever is listening, I love you. Go in peace.
Peace out.